Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today I have Glenn Herman on the line, and he's founder of Herman Herman PC. Glenn, welcome to the show.
Adam, thank you. It's great to be here.
All right, Glenn. So I'm excited to talk and learn more about Herman Herman PC today. And I know you're a cyclist, and we're going to be providing all kinds of value to our fellow cyclists out there. And we're going to talk a lot about what's going on with the e-scooters and bikes and like just transportation in general. I know you're in New York in the city, and I know that this is a big deal. And the way people are getting from place to place is changing. And there's some things that people need to know, both to stay safe physically and to stay protected legally. So we'll get into a lot of these other topics as we kind of go along in the interview. But just to get us kicked off, I'll start with our Mission Matters Minute. So Glenn, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. So that's our mission here. Glenn, what mission matters to you?
Adam, I live in the city. I bike in the city. I've had some very, very close calls. I know just how vulnerable cyclists in the city are. And it's not just cyclists. It's people who ride e-scooters, e-skateboards, hoverboards, and not just people riding these devices, the pedestrians crossing the streets, people out walking their dogs. Yeah. This city is a great city. It's a safe city, and at times it could be dangerous. And what we do at our firm is we really try to help get people back to how their lives were before they had an unfortunate event. And the way we do this is by fighting the insurance companies, because unfortunately, their mission is to try to keep all the money that they've made by taking our premiums, and they battle us when it comes time to paying on fair claims. And what we need to do is take them to court, and that's what we do.
Awesome. And Glenn, love bringing advocates and mission-based entrepreneurs and executives and experts on the line so that they can share, why they do what they do and, what wakes them up and what fires them up. And I know with you, and I can't wait to get more into your cycling. And also, I know you have a race coming up, so we'll get into that. But maybe just to take a step or two back, like how'd you get on this path of both being, obviously a lawyer, but also a cyclist? Like, how'd all that stuff begin?
Cycling, I fell into. I was a runner. I did a couple of New York City marathons. I started jogging, and I think any jogger you ultimately want to do a marathon. Yeah. And luckily, I ended up doing 3 when I first got married, had a child, and eventually I did a turkey trot on Thanksgiving many years ago, and that turkey trot blew out my back, and that was the end of my running days. And my brother turned me on to cycling, and opened up a whole new world of literal adventure and fun. It was exercise, and it was almost like being a kid again. Yeah. When we grew up riding bikes, that's what we do when we were kids. Get on your bike and you go. But now it was road bike. So I went out and bought an entry-level road bike and started cycling. And started looking, and there's bike tours, not necessarily races, but they're tours. You ride at your own pace with a group of friends, and you go out for a day of exercise, fun, and most important, food. Always food, and coffee and beer is usually associated with cycling for some reason.
Yeah.
So it really worked out.
That's awesome. So, and I love that, you know, your practice is involved with something that you do day to day as well, and that you're passionate about with cycling. So, I mean, it's a big deal, and that's why I was one of the interesting reasons I was happy to have you on the show is like to get your vantage point, because I'll tell you what happened on my end, and then I like to see from your side what you saw. So, as I saw, I mean, I remember when I first saw my first scooter that was just out there. I think they, so I'm in LA, so I remember like walking outside one day, and all of a sudden there's just all these scooters everywhere. Like they dropped them off on a corner or something. I don't know. I read about what happened obviously after the fact, but not during the time. I didn't know what was going on. And then so I finally, you know, I see these scooters going on, and I see all these people riding. Some have helmets, some don't. And I see like all these things taking place. And I remember seeing like a couple of people with road rash and stuff that you wouldn't normally see. Like, I'm like, that girl looks more like a model. She doesn't look like she would normally be riding a motorcycle. Like, how did she get that, you know, tore up shoulder? And I seen a couple of people walking around like that. And then one day I'm driving in my car, and this is a true story. I see this person, you know, grab a scooter, and you could tell, you could tell it was their first time. You could tell it was their first time on it. And the reason I could tell, and I don't say this as a joke, because this guy was really hurt, but he kind of didn't understand how fast it could be. He grabbed it and he thought it was kind of like a toy. And when I tell you he face planted into a tree, I mean, he face planted like that scooter, because he was scared and he was holding on to it. And I saw him just like, and I'm like, no helmet, nothing like that. And obviously his first time on any type of vehicle like that, or else he wouldn't have been so hurt. And he just kind of hits it, and he, you know, jumps up, and it's like, I was like, wow. And I'm driving, so I couldn't imagine what happened. And then I started seeing like all the bike lanes and all the other things, like a lot of people that maybe aren't even normally very like they're not going to know biking rules. Like it's a vehicle. Riding a bike is a vehicle, right? So like you have to obey street laws and other things like that, traffic laws, but you see a different mixture. So that's in LA, and we're a little bit more spread out here. But I know you're working, you know, Manhattan, Bronx, like you're working in a whole different animal in terms of congestion and people, right? Like, what did you see as all of this is taking place?
Well, when you say scooter, are you talking about the moped type scooter or the stand-up scooter that you
I've
ride
seen
on?
all of them, like all of them. It seems like they showed up. So we have all of them out here in terms of like the electric vehicle. So the little bike looking one, the one that you stand up on, I've seen many different ones. So the e-bikes, I don't know all the terms for them, I'll be up front, but I know that there's multiple ways of transportation now. Like,
Sure.
like what did you see as this kind of has come up?
Well, I'll separate the two things because there are what's called mopeds.
Got it.
And like Lime, you might have heard of Lime, because Lime has scooters, Lime has bicycles. Yeah. Now Lime also has, the mopeds are like little Vespas, you might have heard of from Europe. They're little mopeds. They're not gas powered, they're electric powered. Yeah. And there's also another company in New York called Revel, and you park those on the street between the cars, but those are registered. Those have license plates. Mm-hmm. They're electric, and with your telephone app, you use your app and you sign up, and those go on the street. Mm-hmm. Those go into traffic, and those have to follow the rules of the road, like a motorcycle. Mm-hmm. And they are deemed essentially a motorcycle, and they are insured like a motorcycle is insured. And the same rules of law that would apply to a motorcycle apply to those. So that's a separate little class of vehicles than the other electric vehicles, which in New York became legal last year. And you're talking about the stand-up ride-on scooters, electric scooters, and the electric bikes. Mm-hmm. And those became legal last year, and those can go in the dedicated bike lanes. They're not supposed to be riding on the streets unless there are no dedicated bike lanes. Yeah. But some of these vehicles, now they're called micro mobility vehicles. Okay. That's the name that has been given to all these electric devices because they're small, they get you around. Problem is, a lot of them go fast.
Yeah.
Some of them can go very, very fast. And they're making them, they're coming out, they're getting very, very popular. And they can go 20, 25 miles an hour, which is the speed limit now in New York. Some of them can go a lot faster. And they're not really permitted on the streets of the city. But they become very, very, very popular.
And so as people are kind of adapting and finding different ways for transportation, and it's getting more congested in the bike lane specifically, right? When I talk about congestion, we're not even talking about traffic, but I just mean like the bike lane is getting more congested with different types of vehicles. And they're like, what should bikers be really thinking about?
It's really a whole new world now. It is a whole new world. Things, I'll call it, are going by. Yesterday, I actually saw a gentleman on a wheel. Oh, it was a wheel, and his feet were on either side of the wheel, and I guess he's controlling it with a little controller. Cruised by. It actually had lights that were turning, so it was visible. I don't know what that is called. I think there's things called hoverboards, which I think is a skateboard that is motorized. You hold a controller in your hand. And I don't know for the life of me how you ride those. It's like snowboard. Just going down the street. So these people using them, they look like they're having a great time. I actually have an e-scooter, which I use. A lot of these things are fun. People are using it in Central Park. There's a big loop, a 6-mile loop in the park. People use it on the weekends. And when you use it safely with a helmet, it's a great way to get around. It's a great way to see the city. So there are a lot of advantages to it. Since the pandemic came, a lot of people scared to ride the subway, scared to ride the buses, and very great way to get around. But at the same time, there's been a lot of injuries.
I think that's also a great transition. So let's go further into Herman and Herman PC. So we talked about it a little bit in the intro, but let's go further. So just directly, tell us more about the firm and your specialty.
Sure. Well, the firm is myself and my partner, who is Robin Herman. She's not just my law partner, she's also my spouse of 30 years. We've been practicing together as Herman and Herman for about the past 6-7 years. I was with different law firms, all personal injury. So I've been doing nothing but personal injury for over 30 years, handled the gamut of every type of injury case you can imagine, products liability. I even did airplane crashes, bus crashes, motorcycle crashes, medical malpractice cases, construction cases, and of course, bicycle cases. But now we have focused on a lot of scooter cases, bicycle cases, pedestrian cases, as well as automobile accident cases, trip and fall cases. We handle pretty much serious injury cases, and there are a lot of injuries in the city. Firm is, again, it's the two of us, so we handle the cases ourselves. We don't pawn it off on an associate. So when you hire us, you get us.
What areas do you specialize in? Not in law, I mean like geographically. Like what are your typical areas that you
sure. Yeah, our office is located Midtown on 8th Avenue and 39th Street, which is right in the Times Square area. And as soon as the theaters start reopening, hopefully Robin likes the shows, so I know we'll be hopefully going back to the shows. But in terms of the courthouses, New York County, Bronx County, Brooklyn, which is Kings County, Queens County, we handle Westchester. is the main courthouses, but we have cases up in Dutchess, Orange County, Nassau County. If you're familiar with the New York area, a lot of people come into Manhattan to see attorneys. It's very common. So we'll take cases from geographically, nothing's that far away. It's just hard to get to. Traffic. But transportation-wise, it's subways and commuter rails, very, very accessible to us.
All right, Glenn. So I want to kind of lay this out in terms of what our cyclists that are watching how they should be thinking about an accident. So obviously, one section that we'll talk about is what to do after the accident, but maybe before we even get into the idea of them being in an accident, like maybe we start with like the preventative side and like how to avoid the accident in the first place. So maybe give us some tips on that and what they should be thinking.
Okay, first thing, and this just sounds so basic, please wear a helmet. There's so many people who, for whatever reason, they just don't wear a helmet. And I know how nice it feels when the wind's blowing your hair when you're riding your bicycle. It does. If you have hair. Some of us don't have as much as we used to, but it's just something that there's no reason not to. And in fact, now I think I even have one. I keep it here for when my son comes to visit. It's a collapsible helmet. So it just collapses. You put it in your backpack and you take it with you, especially because we have the bike share program in the city bike, and they don't provide the helmets. Wear the helmet. Number one. When you're riding, this is not a rural area, New York City, whichever borough you're in. Bronx, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, even Staten Island. It's not rural. You need to think a little ahead of time. Lights. A light in the front, a light in the back. And they're not that expensive, but even during the day, you get a front light that flashes white and the back light flashes red. The front flashing light, you have no idea how visible that makes you to people coming at you. It's unbelievable. A bell, you need a bell just to alert people to you. The cars won't hear it, but pedestrians will. Getting doored, and I'll explain what that is. It's one of the most common injuries. And getting doored is when you're riding your bike, someone opens their car door because they're not looking, and you hit that car door. Very common injury. And my recommendation for that is, well, there's a dooring zone, which is about 3 feet away from cars. So when you're riding with parked cars on your right-hand side or on your left-hand side, stay a few feet, at least 3 feet away from them. We have these arrows in the bike lanes. They call them sharrows. It's like 2 arrows or chevrons. They make the arrows so if you ride through the center of the arrow, they're supposed to be located that if you ride through the center of it, you will be far enough away from the door. I'm not sure if the New York City DOT is actually following that, but there's no reason not to at least try to ride through that. Another thing, if the door opens and you don't have time to think, go into the door. Most people who get seriously injured is from the secondary strike. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen this where people swerve to miss the door and they get hit. And there's been some unfortunate, real serious cases of deaths because of that. Pay attention. If there's a red light, stop for the red light. Follow the rules of the road. We have dedicated bike lanes now that we never had before. They actually switched the lanes of traffic in New York City, which was just something unbelievable. They thought of. They took parking lanes, moved the cars 1 lane over, painted them green, and made dedicated lanes for the bicyclists. Fantastic, except when the cars are making left turns, the drivers aren't thinking to look. And be very, very careful when you're driving through an intersection. Don't move if there's a car moving too. You just never know if they're going to make a right turn into you.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of things that cyclists can try to do to stay a little safer.
Yeah, and I think
they're out riding on the road.
And some of those tips I think are really good. So meaning, and especially just starting with the idea of the helmet and what that can be, and then the dooring part, like you can just see it coming, and it's hard though, because your instinct would be kind of almost to like go to the left and to go into and to dodge the door, to dodge the obstacle, but it's like, man, like that could be really bad because you can't really see what's over your shoulder on that other side. It can be a truck, could be anything, right? Bus, like you don't know. So much better to go into that door. So I think that's also a great tip.
Ride slower when you're passing the cars. Just ride slower. And if you see, a lot of times the cabs and the Ubers, when they're stopping to let people off, they double park. Yeah. And you're going to have to go around them. So look over your shoulder, make sure there's no traffic, and go very far around them. I mean, because if there's a double parked car, there's chances are someone's going to be coming out of the door. Now, legally, they're responsible. The person opening the door is legally responsible. And here's something I recently learned, which is very interesting, because the people in the car, like I just said, are responsible. Yeah. In some European countries, when they take driver's ed, they're taught to open the door with the opposite hand. So if you're on the driver's side, use your right hand to open the door. It forces you to look over your shoulder. If you're on the passenger side, use your left hand to open the door. It forces you to open your shoulder. Simple. It's just thinking. It's the culture. Yeah. And something we probably should do here.
Oh my gosh, that's so smart. How have I never heard that? That's so smart. If you just use the opposite hand, then you have to look because your body's turning. It's amazing. Yeah. That's a great tip.
That I just recently learned. Yeah. So Robin and I know, we, especially during the pandemic, we stayed off the subways. Yeah. And we took a lot of cabs and Ubers, and we'll always look just out of practice.
So let's go a step further here. So let's just say that, unfortunately, there is a case where there is an accident. So take us down the steps of kind of like the tips and what that should look like, or what the cyclist should be thinking about.
Okay. So we'll break it down 2 parts, a crash with a vehicle, and then maybe a crash with a roadway defect. Okay. Or a non-vehicle. Yeah. A vehicle crash, very common. A lot of times, and I've actually seen cyclists get hit, and I've seen people actually get hit, spin up, come down, they get up, and they go on their way. Yes. They're lucky. Yeah. It happens. But if something happens, a lot of people don't get up and go on their way. Yeah. If something happens, first, take care of yourself. Most important. If you're injured, 911 immediately. And in New York, one thing we have here, the emergency responders are amazing. Within minutes. I don't know where they come from. Yeah. But they come fast. Call 911. Get yourself help. Okay? First and foremost. The next thing, get as much information as you can from the vehicle. Okay? So we're talking about the situation where the vehicle stayed, not a hit and run situation. Everyone has a cell phone these days. Yeah. Take pictures. Get the information from the driver, license, registration, so forth. If you can't, ask somebody. One thing New Yorkers is helpful. We come to the rescue of each other, especially when we see something like this happen. If you're in the street, God forbid, get to safety. I mean, if this happens in the street and you're able to drag yourself to the sidewalk, get to the sidewalk. When there's witnesses, just ask their names, have them write their name in your cell phone. So many times we get cases, yeah, this person helped me up. This person's the nicest person. What's their name? I don't know.
Yeah.
So get as much information as you can and call the police. Because what often happens is you might be okay. And then the next day, 2 days later, you're not okay.
Yeah.
And if you don't get the information then, it's very, very hard to get help later on, because that vehicle, the insurance from that vehicle will pay your medical bills, pay your wages, and all the insurance benefits comes from that vehicle. And if we don't have that information, we can't help.
Yeah, that's a great point that you make about if you don't get that information then. I remember being in the back of an Uber at one point, and I was in an accident, and I walked away and I thought I was fine, and then the next day, and of course the police came and all this. It was a pretty bad accident, and so the next day I couldn't move. I couldn't get out of bed. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm not okay. But the adrenaline or whatever it was, like, made me feel okay. I walked. I had somebody pick me up. Like, I was fine the whole day. I ate dinner. It was like nothing else. The next day I couldn't move. And that was in a car. So I can't even imagine, like, sometimes if you're on a bike and you get hit by a car, something else happens. Like, it's very, very probable, in my opinion, that something else is up. Like, there's going to be something, and doctor's bills are not cheap. So like, you need to get anything done. You may not have a broken arm, or you may not have something else, but you might have, who knows, a pinched nerve or something else that happens, unfortunately, that you can't see. You don't know until maybe that swelling starts going down that you didn't even know happened. Like, there's a bunch of different things that could happen. And if you don't have that information, like, I can think about what my doctor's bills ended up being for that. And I was in treatment for over a year for a minor accident, but that was just so that I could the rehab and all of that on my back and all this stuff from a very minor accident, because I just didn't even know. So now if you're on a bike and like that, to think if I would have had to have covered those bills if I hadn't have thought of it, and I wasn't at fault in the accident. That's what the insurance companies are there for in the first place, right? That's the point. And if you're not getting all that information and all those other things, then you're kind of putting yourself in a bad place. Sure.
And this is the most important. Even if it's a hit and run situation, call the police. Most people think it was a hit and run. That's it. I'm screwed. I'll go to call the ambulance. I'll go to the hospital. I have a broken leg. They'll fix my broken leg, and I'll go on with my life. My health insurance will pay for my medical treatment. I'll walk around. What the insurance companies don't tell you is that if you own a car, even though your car is sitting in your driveway, your car insurance will cover you for that hit and run bicycle crash.
Wow.
And most people don't know that.
I didn't know what you just said.
I mean, every state is different.
Sure.
In New York State, you have to report it to the police within 24 hours.
Oh.
If you don't, then the insurance company won't cover it.
Wow.
So if you're hit and it's a hit and run, the car takes off, call the police.
Wow. That's
very
something
important.
Else. Yeah.
Very important.
And the other part of that, and I've just seen it more than once, is that you never know. There could be a local business there that has a security camera. Like, there's cameras all over the place. So that local business has a security camera. You get in touch with them. There can still be things that are done. But if you don't document that with the police, it becomes very difficult.
Right. But the insurance policies, even if you got the camera, the police can find them or they're not find them. But if you don't make that report in 24 hours.
Oh, that's a big deal.
So that's another reason.
So that's one. That's bicycle with a car accident. So give us the other scenario.
The other scenario is a bicycle against a road,
Mm-hmm.
we'll call it. And especially in New York, there's construction. So we have roads being constructed. Mm-hmm. We have roads that were constructed and now they're in terrible shape. There's potholes. There's utility hole covers that are sticking up. There's utility hole covers that are sticking down. Mm-hmm. There are speed bumps that are not marked. We don't know that they're there. There's all kinds of dangers in the road. Mm-hmm. And even in the bicycle lanes. Yeah. When you hit one of these, you could crash, and you can crash bad. In fact, most of our clients who've had these type of crashes usually get thrown from the bicycle. And they end up breaking bones. So in those kind of situations, again, take care of yourself first. 911, get emergency treatment, call the police, make a report. But in those cases, photographing the defect is highly, highly important because things change. If you can't do it yourself, ask a passerby. Please just take some photos. If you can't do it that day, ask your friend, your sibling, your neighbor, go back and just take photographs of that defect because it might be repaired the next day. Not in New York, it usually won't happen the next day, but if they repair it and it's changed, very, very hard for us to prove the case, especially if it's in a public roadway, it's a case against the city, and they say you can't fight City Hall. You can fight City Hall. We have fought City Hall. It's just a little harder because they make it harder, but it can be done. So in those cases, those are the things you need to do there.
No, those are great tips and all great things that people should be keeping in mind as they're trying to stay safe. And if they're unfortunately in an accident, like what do they do next? I think those are all great tips. So I want to get back to the to cycling just a bit here. So I understand, I believe you have a ride coming up, Escape from New York ride. Is that right?
That's right.
So tell us a little bit more about that and like what's going on in the community. Cause I'm excited to hear about like what you're doing in cycling. It's kind of fun to me.
So there's this group, it's called the New York Cycle Club. And it's here in New York City. Yeah. And it's a volunteer group and they put on, they do this once a year. It's called Escape New York Ride. It's called Escape New York because it actually leaves the island of Manhattan, goes over the George Washington Bridge, up into through New Jersey, Bergen County, up to Rockland County. It's just a wonderful ride, and you get to escape New York for a day. And that's awesome. This year was a charity ride, and they raised a lot of good money. They have a host of good sponsors. This year, we just put a little mini team together of myself, my sons, my brother, and some friends. And we did the ride, and it was beautiful, perfect sunny day. They had about 800 riders, all different lengths. I mean, there was a 25, a 50, a 75 mile, 100, and 125 mile, which for us, we stuck to the shorter distance, but it was just a wonderful ride. New York Cycle Club is a wonderful group, and the volunteers were fantastic. And I mentioned the food about cycling, and they actually had an espresso machine and a catered food. It was fantastic. That's awesome. And not only did we escape New York, but we escaped this pandemic that's been going on. It was just a wonderful day out of the city. It was fantastic.
Man, that's awesome.
There's been several of these rides, all around the city. There's a couple of charity rides that happen during the year. There's the big TD bike tour that happens every May. It had to get postponed, but they actually were able to do it this year. So a lot of great biking.
It's awesome. So Glenn, just have to say, I mean, this has been awesome having you on the show. I mean, you got a lot of tips for our cyclists out there in New York and otherwise. So what's next? What's next for you? What's next for Herman and Herman?
What's next for us is to continue doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
I actually, myself, I got one of these pedal assist bikes. To help myself. I've been biking into work. I go down the west side. They have a beautiful bike path. They just, a few years ago, expanded, made it a lot safer. They're still working on it now. And it's a really nice way to get into work. We're building up our firm. We're waiting for the courts to open. Yeah. Actually. You can imagine with COVID, it's been challenging, to say the least. Our clients have been waiting patiently for the courts, as have we. And we're looking forward to continuing what we're doing. There are, you mentioned earlier about the rise in cycling. Yeah. There's been a bicycle boom since last March of 2020. And the bicycle shops have sold out of mid-range cross bicycles. Yeah. The pandemic has caused a increase in the bicycle delivery services. There's Chow Now, Grubhub, Seamless, Delivery.com, Postmates. And between 6 and 8:30 at night, the bicycle lanes, it's like a freeway. Wow. Which I did want to recommend. We talk about pedestrians and walking the dog. When we go out at night now, we live on a corner where there is a dedicated bicycle lane. It's a one-way street. But we have changed our walking habits. We can't just look the way the traffic's coming. Yeah. We have to look both ways, and we have to look both ways twice. The bicycles are coming. They're here to stay, and they're going fast. So people just need to be careful. People need to think. And I think everyone can be safe and enjoy these new modes of transportation and so forth. Yeah, that's a great point you bring up about the pedestrian side of things. And like it's a little bit more dangerous being a pedestrian nowadays, especially like you mentioned earlier about that I forget what they're called too, but the single wheeled hoverboard, whatever you called it, but those things go fast. I seen one of those fly by me too as a pedestrian. And I was like, I was so thrown off because there's nothing else around them. It's like a person that's just floating and they're going pretty quickly depending on who's riding it. Right. And now pedestrians do have to look both ways, like you said. And then the delivery man part too. Yeah, that's different. It's a whole nother world there. Like there's those boxes going everywhere I've seen now. And I've been, again, as a pedestrian or as riding a scooter or something else, like it's busy. It's busy out there. So no, all great tips and all great insight there. So Glenn, if somebody's watching this right now and they want more information on Herman and Herman and to connect with you and your team, I mean, what's the best way for them to do that? The best way to find us is to go to HermanNYC.com, HERMAN, NYC.com. That's the best way to find us. They'll see our website and they'll get all our information and they'll learn about us and they'll be able to contact us. They'll be able to call us. And that is absolutely the best way to get in contact with us. But you did mention delivery men. And which reminds me of a story I really just need to bring to your attention.
Do it. Give it to me. I want it.
This happened a few months ago. I was leaving my building. I'm in the lobby, and there was a delivery man. And they have these large backpacks. They're like 3 foot by 2 foot.
Yes, they're huge.
On their back because they're bringing the food.
Yeah.
And he looked lost. I said, "Can I help you?" He says, "Yeah, I'm delivering Pinkberry." I said, oh, is there a party in the building? He said he was looking for an apartment. He says, no, I'm delivering a pinkberry. I said, you mean the frozen yogurt that's 2 blocks away? He says, yeah. I said, you mean for like a party? He said, no, I have 1 pinkberry. I said, you mean somebody actually asked you for 1 pinkberry? He said, yeah. He says, can you help me? I said, yeah. And, I directed him to the apartment, and I said to myself, my father would have hit me upside the head if I had 1 ice cream delivered to the house as opposed to walking 2 blocks away. But then I thought to myself, you know what? This is a gig economy.
Yes.
This delivery man is making money by making a delivery. Hopefully the pinkberry eater gave him a nice tip.
Yes.
A local business is being supported.
Yes.
And this person is getting her treat.
Yeah.
And it's seeing that because of the e-bike, he's able to bring her the pinkberry quick before it melted. And he can go on and deliver, I don't know, a chicken wing or, a piece of pie next time. That was just something that struck me.
Oh, man.
It was really interesting.
Oh man, Glenn, I tell you, it's been a pleasure having you on this show. And on that note, that's a perfect wrapping up. Now I'm hungry over here. I'm thinking pinkberry. I'm thinking I could use a boba, like a tea. Like I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have to walk a half a block down. They can just bring it to me.
Yeah, and he said to me, hey, dude, just use the app. Just use the app.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Oh, well, Glenn, I want you to leave the website one more time just to make sure that people can, and we'll put it in the show notes as well, so people can just click on it. But if somebody wants to connect to learn more about Herman and Herman, what's the best way?
It's hermannyc.com. That's HERMANNYC.com.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you for coming on the show. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you had a lot of fun listening to this. We had a lot of fun bringing this to you and collaborating and getting these great tips and words of wisdom for Glenn on how to really stay safe out there and how to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves on our bikes or whatever type of vehicle we're using, of course. If this is your first time watching, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. We definitely want you to be a return visitor and listener. And Glenn, again, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Can't wait to the next time. This was fun.
Thank you for having me, Adam.